He wasn't a general. He didn't command troops or fire a single shot. Yet Joseph Goebbels helped orchestrate one of the most horrifying movements the world has ever known, using only words, theater, and fear. He was more than just Nazi Germany's Minister of Propaganda. He was its spellcaster, its illusionist, the man who could spin mass murder into national duty, who could lie so convincingly that millions marched into darkness believing they were walking toward glory. Goebbels didn't just serve Hitler, he worshipped him, he shaped him, and in the final days of the Third Reich, he did something so disturbing, so unfathomable, that even hardened SS officers looked away. Before he became Hitler's mouthpiece, Joseph Goebbels was a failed novelist with a club foot and a thirst for purpose. He had a PhD in literature, a hunger for recognition, and an ego bigger than the Reich he helped create. His diaries are some of the most unsettling personal records of the Nazi era, filled not just with ideological obsession, but with obsessive praise for one man. After meeting Hitler in 1925, Goebbels wrote, "Adolf Hitler, I love him. He's a genius." To Goebbels, Hitler wasn't just a political figure, he was a prophet, a savior. This wasn't political alignment, it was religious devotion. Goebbels found meaning in submission. In his mind, he wasn't following a man, he was fulfilling a destiny. And Hitler saw value in that loyalty. Within years, Goebbels was elevated to orchestrate the Nazi message. But he wasn't just delivering speeches, he was engineering an alternate reality. As propaganda minister, Goebbels controlled every word the German public saw or heard. Radio, film, theater, literature, even school textbooks, all filtered through his office. He turned fear into fuel, rage into rhythm. Every slogan, every chant, every goose-stepping rally was meticulously designed to hypnotize a broken nation. When synagogues were burned and Jewish businesses smashed during Kristallnacht, it was Goebbels who helped frame it as a spontaneous public reaction. When Nazi soldiers invaded neighboring countries, it was Goebbels who called it self-defense. He didn't just manipulate reality, he rewrote it. Even the lies were beautiful. He used cinema and radio not only to glorify Hitler, but to soften the edges of war. He knew the masses didn't need facts, they needed feelings, fear, pride, hatred, hope, and he delivered it all in perfectly packaged soundbites. But while his public image was built on discipline and ideology, Goebbels behind closed doors was something else entirely. He was erratic, jealous, addicted to power, and women. He had multiple affairs, most famously with Czech actress Lida Bardová, a scandal so explosive it nearly cost him his job. Even Hitler had to step in to cover it up. He preached family values in speeches, yet viewed his wife and children as props in a twisted morality play. Goebbels didn't love as a husband or father, he was possessed. He commanded. And when his world began to collapse, that need for control would take him to unthinkable places. By 1945, with Berlin in flames and Soviet shells shaking the ground, Goebbels followed Hitler into the Führer bunker. But unlike the others who still clung to hope, Goebbels had already made peace with death. He was preparing something final, not just for himself, but for his wife and 6 children. He was still dressed in uniform. He still wrote in his diary, but now his fanaticism was laced with fatalism. In his mind, the Reich was not allowed to lose, and if it did, then everything and everyone tied to it had to go with it. By late April 1945, Berlin's sky was a constant drum roll of artillery. Smoke choked the streets. The Battle of Berlin had ripped every safe space to shreds. Against this backdrop, Joseph and Magda Goebbels made their final, irrevocable choice to enter the Vorbunkar behind the Reich Chancellery, bringing their 6 children, Helga, Hilde, Helmut, Hulde, Hedwig and Heide, with them. In their diaries and private letters, both Goebbels acknowledged a creeping sense of doom. Magda expressed to Hitler's secretary Traudl Junge, "I would rather have my children die than live in disgrace, jeered at." For them, it was a twisted act of loyalty to the Reich, a final assertion of control. Inside the Vortbunker, the children appeared almost oblivious. Witnesses recalled them playing, singing, even sleeping side by side in white nightgowns. Nurse Erna Flegel described them as charming and absolutely delightful. But any illusion of innocence was brutally shattered by the adults' resolve. The Goebbels had discussions about the plan. Albert Speer offered to evacuate the children, but Magda refused. Hitler's physician, Dr. Ludwig Stumpfegger, and SS dentist Helmut Kunz quietly prepared. Morphine syringes stood ready as the cruel centerpiece of an unparalleled betrayal. On May 1st, after Hitler and Eva Braun had taken their lives, the tragic finale began. The children received morphine injections from Kunz. Once sedated, Magda and Stumpfegger crushed cyanide capsules between their teeth. This was no act of desperation. It was calculated. Documents and testimonies confirmed Magda had been planning this for weeks. She wanted her children to die with dignity before the Red Army humiliated them. Goebbels fathered the horror. Magda executed the most intimate betrayal. Shortly after the children were killed, Josef and Magda climbed into the garden above. Eyewitness SS Adjutant Gunther Schwegermann later testified that Josef fired a shot that killed Magda, then turned the gun on himself. Other reports suggest they took cyanide together, with a possible coup de grace for Goebbels. Either way, their bodies were drenched in petrol and set ablaze, just yards from where Hitler and Eva Braun had been cremated. The symbolic echoes were clear. The Reich's poison ended in its own blood. The Soviets took control of the bunker site on May 2nd. The following day, they discovered the 6 children, prominent signs of cyanide around their faces, still dressed in nightgowns with ribbons in their hair. The medical examiners and Soviet records confirmed a horrific scene of family annihilation. 6 young lives sacrificed on an altar of ideological loyalty. In the infamous Spiegel investigation, SS dentist Kunz was later tried, not for murder, but for aiding and abetting homicide. Even decades later, this act remains one of the war's most harrowing moments. A mass killing by parents who chose death for their children because they believed cruelty was compassion. After the bunker horror, history didn't wrap neatly around Joseph Goebbels' image. Instead, his legacy grew darker, not just for what he did, but how his family and the new Germany tried to bury the truth. Goebbels' surviving relatives lived in shame. Attempts were made to sanitize his role in propaganda and terror, and for decades his name echoed quietly through academic debates, but never quite escaped its taint. The propaganda minister's influence didn't vanish with his death. His methods, mass manipulation, emotional targeting, and spectacle found rebirth in modern politics and media. Some scholars argued that the Goebbels playbook is still being used today in far-right movements and disinformation campaigns. In post-war Germany, there was an uneasy tension between remembering and forgetting. Streets and schools were renamed. Statues were torn down, yet the cultural appetite for confronting Goebbels' legacy was minimal. Books and films focused heavily on Hitler and Himmler, but seldom on the mastermind who sold their story. When historians finally turned to Goebbels, they uncovered disturbing diary passages. His hatred for the disabled, his belief in racial purity, his joy at Jewish suffering. These weren't peripheral comments. They were the core of his worldview. It took decades for Germany's schools to teach the full horror of Nazi propaganda. But today, in textbooks and documentaries, we see the full face of the man, the smiling monster in tailored suits, whispering hate into the hearts of millions. Some of Goebbels' own prodigies tried to adapt his techniques post-war. Former propagandists pivoted into advertising, public relations, even Cold War broadcasts. Their influence persisted, haunting media strategy with the same emotional manipulations. Meanwhile, survivors and cultural critics argue that the failure to fully indict propaganda's role in genocide contributes to modern indifference towards disinformation. "We forgot the poison in the well," one historian said, a quote that nails the lingering danger of Goebbels' legacy. This isn't just history, it's a warning. The horror of watching Goebbels sign off on genocide while grooming his children to die in a bunker is a testament to what happens when obsession morphs into ideology. And ideology becomes violence. Goebbels' story demands that we remain vigilant, not only about overt dictators, but subtle manipulations. The tools he perfected, fear, spectacle, emotional targeting, are weaponized every day in political ads, social media, and extremist messaging. They look different, but their DNA is the same. Joseph Goebbels disappeared in a firestorm below Berlin, his body burned along with his children's lifeless forms. But his methods survived the Reich's ashes. The voice that poisoned a nation didn't die with him. If there's one lasting legacy from Goebbels, it is this: beware the man who doesn't fire a gun, but fires your mind instead. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.